The brainchild of Shinichiro Watanabe and released in the post-Evangelion anime boom of the late 1990s, Cowboy Bebop is one of the most iconic television shows ever created and is outright legendary in animated circles. A series set to redefine the industry as a whole, it's undeniable that Bebop did just that. Given the project under the vague guidelines of make anything as long as it has spaceships in it by Studio Sunrise, Cowboy Bebop is a mishmash of genres and tropes from across the fictional landscape. An overt fusion of science fiction and spaghetti westerns, Cowboy Bebop is a series that transcends genre in more ways than one. But the topic I want to focus on now is how the show's musical compositions are integral to the atmosphere, structure, and even the look of the show, and how unlike any other show I've seen before or since, it blends music and visuals to the point where one cannot be removed from the other without changing the structure or meaning behind it. The series proper follows the crew of the Bebop, a band of bounty hunters as they try to scrape by in space. Set in a world where humanity has gone beyond the stars, Cowboy Bebop differentiates itself from its sci-fi contemporaries by breaking away from their post-scarcity worlds and instead portraying a world that is dark, grungy, and cold, where even trying to put dinner on the table is a routine struggle.
It's ready.
I'm just about finished. What's cooking?
Special bell peppers and beef. Asimov Solensen. He's our next target.
Listen, Jed.
This guy's a major player in the syndicate, operates all around the asteroids.
You said bell peppers and beef.
His name's Asimov Solensen. Are you listening to me?
There's no beef in here. So you wouldn't really call it bell peppers and beef, now would you?
Yes, I would.
Well, it's not!
It is when you're broke, all right?
Music is something that is and always has been at the focal point for Watanabe. Out of the 6 full-length shows he's directed to date, 4 make reference to music or sound in their titles alone, and one of the 2 that doesn't, Kids on the Slope, is about a jazz band in and of itself. For the monumental task of creating Cowboy Bebop, a work that, as Watanabe described it, would create a whole genre unto itself, he assembled an all-star team of writers, episode directors, and animators, all being pulled from across the industry wherever he could get them. But the most notable face for the purposes of this essay is that of Yoko Kanno, the series' musical composer. Growing up as classically trained musician and discovering jazz on a trip to the US in college, it was Kanno and her band The Seatbelts that created the iconic jazz soundtrack of the show, which shares parity with the series itself in terms of recognition. The decision to use jazz music for the series' compositions was a pointed one. Theremins and synthesizers of its science fiction contemporaries were ditched in favor of a familiar and decidedly human sound. Instruments like the theremin were used in sci-fi to convey a sense of otherworldliness with their digital and electronic sounds, whereas jazz instruments are all analog. But more to the point, the anachronistic blend of science fiction and spaghetti western in Bebop is grounded in the familiarity that mid-century jazz has in the collective consciousness of the viewers. Cowboy Bebop might be a story set on Mars, and it might be about cowboys, but it's ultimately a human story, a story that just as easily could take place in a 21st century society. Interestingly, Watanabe would go on to do almost the exact opposite in his next full-length series, Samurai Champloo, often seen as a spiritual successor to Cowboy Bebop. In this series, he would take the Chanbara samurai genre and mash it up with modern hip-hop to create a distinctly unique feel. It's no secret that the script for Cowboy Bebop was left somewhat open, with some scenes not being fully written during the initial writing process, leaving room for Kanno's compositions to influence the direction of the show. But the reverse was also true, the writing of the show pushing Kanno to develop the iconic sounds the series would eventually take on. That's something that I don't think a lot of people appreciate, so I'm going to state it again. The music changed the story. On most film productions, the timeline is so compressed that composition is largely done as post-production work, temporary music being put in during the edit. This leads to problems down the line when directors get attached, often resulting in final compositions being changed to sound more like the temp music. This is usually magnified for television production, but not with Cowboy Bebop. Kanno's development of the soundtrack prior to the final drafts of the story allowed both elements to work together seamlessly, with one element reflecting the other. We can see the clear and deliberate integration of sound and video from the first episode of the series, Asteroid Blues. The episode deals with the series' protagonist, Spike Spiegel, and his right-hand man, Jet Black, tracking down the drug dealer Asimov Solensen. This all comes to a head in a hand-to-hand confrontation, perfectly synced to Kanno's Rush.
You look surprised.
You look ridiculous in that outfit. I thought you weren't after my bounty.
There's no thrill in the cheap ones, Asimov, you know?
I think you do better as a thief, bounty boy. Now hand it over.
Glad to. I have to pay you back, don't I?
The fight starts off slow and trepidatious. The bass hovers as the two men try to gauge their distance from one another, their bodies tight and cautious of the other's every move, before the saxophone and the rest of the instruments come in swinging as the fight opens up into the wider restaurant area and Spike loosens up. The punches fly with the percussion, but not actually hitting, never actualizing that connection until Asimov breaks the table, emphasizing that punch's ferocity. It's a small thing, but the lack of that connection at the start clues us into something being off about Asimov and his movements. While Asimov is a dealer, he's also an avid user of the drug Red Eye, and we can see those effects in his movements. They're slightly erratic and offbeat. They don't hit with the percussion like they naturally should. That being said, when they do at the table break, its lack of inclusion up until now makes the coalescence of the percussion and the animation all the more effective. We, like Asimov, have to wait for a punch to hit, and now that it has, the whole fight opens up for everyone. By way of contrast, Spike, represented by the brass instruments, is completely in sync with the music, even telling Asimov,
You trust your eyes too much, Asimov. You're not a chameleon, you know.
perhaps a subtle indication that Spike is able to win because he's able to play around with the music so well, an idea which is bolstered by his quick footwork, which almost resembles dance steps. This is a level of connection that would be impossible after the fact, or even if the scene's direction and the music's composition were carried out independently. Instead, what we get when both are done in conjunction is an entrancing scene that flows perfectly, with the rhythmic ebb and flow of Kano's masterful jazz compositions, while also furthering the plot and character development of our central character. I think the best example of the ties between the sound and the visuals, and the place where it's most evident, are in the series' opening and ending credits. The opening to Cowboy Bebop is an immediate tone setter. It grabs you by the seat of your pants and lets you know what you're in for. A fast, booming brass beat hits you in the face before being replaced with a stylish bass line as the lyrics count down. From here, what we're treated to is just over a minute of pure style. The song Tank's iconic saxophone solo opens us up to the monochrome world of drugs, sex, and shootouts of Cowboy Bebop. It paints the world of our protagonists as one of style and adventure, where you are always dodging that last bullet, always having that last drink, and always smoking that last cigarette. Cowboy Bebop is a show that was trying to be noticed, and its opening theme alone is like a beacon drawing would-be watchers to it. The clean, polished, perfectly timed music reflects how each character would like to be seen. Both Spike and Faye spend large amounts of time throughout the show putting on a facade, an act covering up for past filled with grief and regret. This is subsequently reflected in the show's ending theme, The Real Folk Blues, a slow, decidedly somber and monochrome affair, where Tank was outward and bombastic, a musical statement to the world, and an overall declaration that I am here, tinged with black and white silhouettes, contrasting primary colours and a rising sax solo, an appeal to simply focus on the surface elements of the characters and what they project outwardly. The Real Folk Blues turns inward to express the sadness that lies beneath it all. The stark blacks and whites are replaced with muddy greys. The primary colours are left only with the striking red of a dying rose. The true complexity of the situation is brought into focus as the once suave saxophone from before laments the days gone by. If Tank is the characters as they want to be, stylish, suave, clean, without hesitation, then the Real Folk Blues is what they really are.
Too late to let you know what you mean to me. If I cried, I'd only make you believe I was happy. I've got to let you go, and my heart, it aches, but it's worth it 'cause I swear to God, you're a mistake. The real folk blues, I need the pain. My unhappiness is proof I'm not insane.
A confused mess, unable to process a past they neither understand nor wish to. The song is about someone struggling with a love he can't have anymore, how the memory of their love is preventing them from living. The instrumentation reflects this along with the lyrics. The guitar in the background can't seem to decide what direction it wants to go in, up and down as the lover wrestles with what it is they've lost. Faye puts on airs as the Bebop's resident femme fatale, confident in her body and sexuality, and totally in control of who she is, what she does, not to mention the men around her. But she's actually an amnesiac from a time before, with no memories of where she comes from or where to go. Spike portrays himself as the calm and collected bounty hunter, always dressed in a suit and willing to throw down at a moment's notice. He drinks, he smokes, he fights. He wins. He doesn't care for much, nonchalantly strolling around even in dire straits. But in reality, he's a former high-ranking member of the criminal Red Dragon Syndicate, who only left after falling for Julia, only for her to then die in the ensuing incident.
Where are you going? Why are you going? You told me once to forget the past, because it doesn't matter. But you're the one still tied to the past, Spike!
Look at my eyes, Faye. One of them is a fake because I lost it in an accident. Since then, I've been seeing the past in one eye and the present in the other. So I thought I could only see patches of reality, never the whole picture.
Don't tell me things like that. You never told me anything about yourself. So don't tell me now.
I felt like I was watching a dream I'd never wake up from. Before I knew it, the dream was all over.
My memory finally came back. But nothing good came of it. There was no place for me to return to. This was the only place I could go. And now you're leaving, just like that. Why do you have to go? Where are you going? What are you going to do? Just throw your life away like it was nothing?
I'm not going there to die. I'm going to find out if I'm really alive. I have to do it, Faye.
Once again, we can see how the music of the show is anything but auxiliary. It is instead informing us of key details about the characters and foreshadowing their fates, allowing us to understand them through the medium of sound when they can't even understand themselves. You might have noticed something I referenced earlier. The first episode, entitled Asteroid Blues, obviously a reference to the blues, a genre of music that cropped up around the 1870s and is often associated with the newly found freedom of slaves in America. This parallels how Asimov and his wife Katerina dream of leaving the asteroid of Tijuana for a new prosperous life on Mars. These references permeate each episode's title and often reference more contemporary songs, bands and genres. These not only inform the watcher about what type of episode they're about to watch and add subtext, but they have an important role in the meta context of the show. They create the feeling that each of the episodes is almost like a single from a larger album. Bebop is often noted for its decidedly episodic nature as opposed to the standard serialized format of its ilk. Any of the episodes can, in theory, be watched in any order, like a single. They stand independent of each other. They share common elements across the board, the same characters or instruments, with key additions and subtractions over time. This also goes some way to explain how small, mostly insignificant details across the series can change from some episodes to others, or the bizarre directions some of the episodes will go in from time to time. They're each standalone works that can be viewed as such, but the act of watching them in order to completion simply enhances that overall experience. One of the greatest strengths of our modern interconnected society is the proliferation and dissemination of art across the world. Because of that, what you often find are mediums blurring lines or filling roles that would traditionally be left to others. It's never been easier to find songs telling narratives, it's never been easier to find films dedicated to evoking pure emotion, and it's never been easier to find a piece of art conveying life in all its pain and glory. But what you rarely find is a melding pot of all of them. If you look to the recent years, we had the likes of Baby Driver, but that film had the audio and musical realms take center stage. What we get in Cowboy Bebop, however, is equality and parity. a series that's music is inseparable from its story. For many, it's impossible to think of Cowboy Bebop without immediately conjuring up the iconic saxophone of Tank. Impossible to listen to Too Good To Bad without imagining flying through space on the Bebop. Cowboy Bebop is a series where one element doesn't merely complement the other, but one where one changed and helped formulate what the other would become.